When I was writing the title of this swell and I put in all those big famous names, I was thinking, why am I doing that? Why not just put Mark Schiff's name right there and say, hey, he's in the house, let's have a conversation. But we're living in a world obviously driven by big names that capture our attention, and it's just the way of marketing. And I wanted to make sure I caught your attention because Mark Schiff is a true legend, a true treasure. And the more I read about him and get to know him, the more I'm excited that he's going to be a voice here on Swell. He has a new book out called Why Not, which is subtitled Lessons on Comedy, Courage, and Chutzpah. And I had the pleasure of seeing him in Los Angeles on Saturday night. And he just was so gentle and available and funny, full of pathos. And I thought this would be a great conversation on Swell. So, Mark, thank you for being here. I'm really thrilled to have a conversation with you. And yes, Bill Maher has said beautiful things about you, as, of course, Jerry Seinfeld and Jay Leno as well have just sung your praises. But I want to read this one thing that Bill says on your book. Starting out in stand-up comedy with Mark Schiff was a blast, and the humor he brought to the stage back then is now between the pages of this book, plus the wisdom you get when you add time. And I just think that really captures the benefit of speaking with somebody who has been on stage for as long as you have, and you've seen the rise and fall of a lot of artists around you. On the back of your book, you have comments from Paul Reiser, Colin Quinn, Kevin Nealon, Jonathan Kellerman, Carol Leifer, I love her, and of course the great Jerry Seinfeld, who you're on tour with right now. So I just want to let people know a few more things about you before we get into a conversation. You've been on tour recently with Jerry and Jay Leno. You've also have had a show produced on HBO. It was a play you created called The Comic, and they produced it and made it into a film, which is epic, by the way. That's so amazing. You also wrote a book called I Killed, which are true stories of the road, which was published by Random House. And of course, as somebody who continues to live and breathe every day, you come up with new material, which is so what artists do. They don't stop at any point. They just keep on bringing it in and having new perspectives on life. And I also had the pleasure to meet your wife, who just seems so vital and alive and happy and fun. And I'm just so happy to have met you in a place in your life where you just got back from vacation and you're kind of you're just grateful. I felt your gratitude. I felt your joy. And I think that's so needed, especially in the times we're living now. So I wanted to start off by this introduction, which I hope I did justice to, and then pop a first question for you to see how you can respond, which has to do with the alchemy of comedy mixed into someone's life is such a force, and we all know that we love people who make us laugh. Did you find yourself as a young person when you were a little guy, and I see pictures of you as a little guy making people laugh, how much of that was a coping mechanism for sort of harder times? Because I know comedy is also something that we do to deflect or to cope with times that are less pleasurable than we'd like them to be. Can you talk about the role comedy has played in your younger years, specifically to navigate some more complex, difficult, darker times?
Hi, Deborah. Mark Schiff here from my lovely little tiny home in Los Angeles. Yeah, your question is one that people. Were you a funny little guy? Were you funny when you're a little guy? Were you really funny? So there's a couple of answers to that. First of all, I tried to be funny around my parents, especially my mother. My mother had a hard time with happiness. She was miserable a lot of the time, and she was probably had some sort of disorder, like a bipolar thing. But we didn't know that when I was growing up. That was called high strung. Doctor said, "You're high strung. Just go relax." Yeah, we would try telling somebody like that to relax. Impossible. It makes them crazier when you tell a person to calm down that's really hyped up. It gets them actually more hyped up. So I always tried to make my mother laugh. That was a big part of it. But I wasn't really funny yet because I wasn't, you're working on this talent. You don't even know it's a talent. You don't know what you're going to be when you get older. So people considered me one of the most annoying people they ever met on the planet. They would say this to me. You know, Mark, you are so annoying. I've never met anybody more annoying than you. You're the most annoying person I've ever met. Why do you have to annoy me? Do you live to annoy me? Teachers. Mark, stop annoying the person next to you. Leave him alone. And, yeah. But when I was 12 years old, my parents took me to see a show, and Rodney Dangerfield, the comedian, was on the show there. He was the opening act. And I saw Rodney, and I saw my parents laughing. I saw everybody around me laughing. And I said, that's it. I know what I want to do for a living. And I wanted to become a comedian. I said, I'm going to be a comedian. I didn't even know what a comedian was. And Rodney would do these jokes, these marriage jokes. You know, I'm 12 years old. What do I know about marriage? Except, you know, I'm an only child, too. I would just watch my parents' marriage. I remember he did a joke. He said, my wife is like a car. Sometimes I can't get it to turn over in the morning. Now, everybody laughed. I had no idea what he was talking about, but I laughed too. I eventually became friends with Rodney when I went into comedy. He mentored me in a way he didn't even know it. So, yes, I was trying to be funny, but if you have talent, it's an interesting thing I learned. Courage has to precede the talent. Courage has to come first. Talented people think they have a talent. They maybe know they have a talent, but they don't know how to deal with this talent. So it takes courage to bring that talent out and work with it, whether you're a writer, an actor, a singer, a comedian, whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be talent. If you think, you know, you might be good at, you know, working with electrical things, it takes courage to step up and try it. Whatever it is. So, I hope that answers part of your question.
Hey, Mark, I'm so happy to hear you here. I think we're going to talk for like the next 60 days. And I love that you brought up courage. And I took a stand-up class when I first moved to LA, and I was at the Improv, and I put it on my website and everything. It's on YouTube. And I remember how much prep it took to get those 8 minutes. I mean, it was weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. But what I brought to it definitely was a prior knowledge of what it felt like to be on stage, because I was there for so many years as a musician. But this was not my normal milieu. So for me to go up there, it was really mind-boggling. And I felt very proud of myself. And I think I need to do it again, actually, 13 years later, because I want to see if I still got the chops. But here you are. You've penned books. You have gone through massive amounts of societal changes and probably commenting on all of them in your career. And that's what we look towards you for. We need comedians to help us provide perspective. I remember after 9/11 when people started speaking up, when it was, I think it was Jon Stewart or Bill Maher or even David Letterman. These people lifted us and they helped us. Because we knew they can handle it. Because comedians, you guys play with fire all the time. You play with the tenderness of the human experience, and you flip it over on its head, and you make us laugh at ourselves, and it's so beautiful. Can you tell us about a time that was difficult for you to find humor in, but when you did, you were like, oh my God, thank God I found the thread here, because I'm going to go with it. I would love to hear a story about that, because I'm sure you've come up against a lot of times when you're like, this isn't funny, but you had to step in and be and shepherd us through the times.
Hi there. Yep, I'm back. Mark Schiff here. Great question. You should listen to the song. You probably have heard it, but for anybody else that's listening to this, listen to There's No Business Like Show Business. And it's all about having to go on stage and do what we do in times of adversity. So every comedian has done this, if you've been around long enough. I was on a cruise ship in Alaska when I got a phone call in my little cabin to turn the TV on, and I did, and the World Trade Centers had just been knocked down. September 11th, 9/11. And we were docked in Alaska, and I went and I actually got a phone call through to my wife in Los Angeles at the school where she was working. She was okay, thank God. And she didn't know if they weren't going to be bombed in Los Angeles the next day. But I was up in Alaska, and there's no way out of there. So when we got back on the cruise ship, I found the cruise director, and I said, I have a show booked for tomorrow. What are we doing? He said, we're doing it. Want a cruise? Yeah, the World Trade Centers were knocked down, but people want to be entertained. And I said, really? This is, pretty dramatic here. America's at war. And he goes, no, we gotta do the show. So 9/12, 7 p.m., big theme music, 400 people in their seats. They're on a cruise ship. They got nowhere else to go. We're out in the ocean, so they're not getting any TV, no CNN, none of that stuff anymore. Everything's, it wasn't very good in those days, TV-wise, on a ship. And I did my comedy show. And lo and behold, they laughed. And they laughed pretty heartily. And at the end of the show, I said to them, hey, listen, we all had a good time here tonight, but we know what's happening in New York. And let's just take a minute to pray for these people. So we did that. And then I got off to a real nice round of applause. I've done many of these shows. I went to Israel when Jews would be just walking in the street getting stabbed for no apparent reason. And I did shows during that period. I did a show in New Jersey a week after they killed a bunch of Jewish people in a grocery there, deli. And I did mention it at the end of my act too. I said, listen, we're only a couple of miles away from those people that were killed. Let's keep it in mind that life is not only about laughter. But we've done these shows. I've done a show when my father died a few days later for 1,000 people in Lake Tahoe. The show must go on. You have to do it. When I'm on the road and I'm booked, I can't not do my show. There's nobody to replace me. I think it happened to us once. I was with Jerry Seinfeld, and his one of his kids got hurt. Nothing serious, but got hurt, and Jerry didn't know how bad it was. And we were going to do a show for 3,000 people. And he said to the producer who's with us, he said, let's reschedule. And they made an announcement, and lo and behold, we went back 6 months later to the middle of the country. The show was rescheduled. People had their tickets, came. Ones that couldn't come back got their money back, and other people bought their seats. So we do it. It's just the way it is with comedy. We do it. Actors, sometimes with a play, they got, an understudy so somebody could skip out. But that's not the way it is with comedians. I have no understudy when I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, or, who knows where, somewhere in Louisiana or Iowa. Imagine me trying to find another comedian to replace me in Iowa. Don't think it's going to happen.
You are absolutely right. You're irreplaceable. Iowa in particular. What would we do without the brilliance and the levity and the pathos of comedians? I had a round table a couple years ago with clowns. And one of the things I discovered here on Swell is that clowns are very serious. There's a lot of stuff behind a clown story. And I do want to talk with you a little bit about the psychology of you and you as a comedian. And I know you're a devout Jewish man, so that plays into your trust and faith in making decisions with a higher power, I'm sure. Do you think that comedy is different now than it was back then? Back then, you can think about that any way you want, but I know it's a different time now. And when you stand on stage, you have a particular style that's a different style than other people, and we hope everyone is unique. But when you think about your role as a comedian right now, given the world and all its trials and tribulations, and all the weird energy around cancel culture and things like that. What has changed most for you, and what do you look forward to when you step on stage now that maybe is different than what you look forward to in the past? So I'm trying to get a sense of how you look and consider how you look at it, and how you consider your career right now as a response to what's going on right now, which is different than what was going on 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago. What's different for you now?
Hello, my name's Natasha Noel, and I'm just so glad that you're on here. I wanted to comment about you saying that courage came before talent, and you're so right. I just wanted to kind of share my story. I'm a talker too, so I'll try to keep it short. But I'm divorced after 25 years, and I decided, I was going to do all those bucket list things. I'm 52 years old now. I was about 48 when this started. But, I had a nursing degree. I was going to be a nurse and all this. And I kind of put that on. I was so messed up in the head when I, got divorced. Didn't know what I was going to do. Ended up in a government apartment. Just what do I do? I've always wanted to be an actress when I was younger. And, I told myself, now's my time to do those things. And since divorce, I actually co-produced a little independent film. I've been in several films and did some things. And I started working as a travel agent. And I befriended the CEO of the first company I was with. And he told me, he was kind of like a mentor to me. He'd been a millionaire, most of his life. And he gave me some amazing advice. And it was amazing to me that here I was in a government apartment with 4 kids. And since divorce, I had met several people that were extremely successful at whatever they did in different fields, actually. And my best friend is a well-known musician. And he really encouraged me to write, because I'm a writer, and he encouraged me to publish my children's book. I showed him this little book that I had kind of put off since my kids were little. And anyway, but I started writing after I divorced. 2 weeks after I divorced, my house burned down. Everything I ever wrote, every piece of art I ever did, everything was gone. A lifetime that was sitting there waiting for me to publish, sitting there waiting for me to do something with. And, I'd had an abusive life, a father that was, physically abusive, and a husband that kind of discouraged me. But here I am. So I'm thinking I can't write anymore. It's gone. All that's gone. The only thing I cared about was my baby pictures anyway, really. When it comes down to it, stuff doesn't matter. Nothing matters except for the people in your life. But I got the courage, and my friend that was really just telling me, you're talented, do it. Since I've known him, I've wrote like 100 songs. I have wrote buku of poems. I write every day now. And I published that children's book. And I've got just a ton of things that I'm ready to publish. Now, money's my problem, so I'm working on it. But I've not given up. I don't let anything stand in my way. I will publish my books. I will do more, But I'm so proud of myself, because all it took was for me to grab a little bit of courage, to really start believing in myself. I know that I'm talented in my own way, but I never thought nobody else wanted to hear it, whatever. I don't give two flying, what people think. I'm going to do me, and I'm going to grow and do all that I can, what I have left in life. I mean, like I said, I'm 52 years old. I bought my own franchise, as a travel agent, and I do that, and I write, and courage is the answer, because you have to take a step. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you sit there on it, you're never going to do anything. Now, am I successful at what I do? It depends on how you define success, really. I define success as doing what makes your soul happy. And if your soul is happy and you're actually getting up every day with a smile on your face, excited about what you're doing, then that's success to me. So thank you.